Hi, everyone. This is Heather Hodges. I'm an organizational psychologist. Welcome to my show. This is the place where we say I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. Today's guest is an entrepreneur who has boundless creative energy. Dr. Michelle Griffin is the founder and CEO of Griffin Resources, which is an end-to-end business solutions provider based in Tampa, Florida. And since founding her company, Michelle has built Griffin Resources into a comprehensive organization which offers HR outsourcing, talent acquisition, sales strategy, and operational support services on a fractional hourly basis. And Michelle holds a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from Grand Canyon University, also my alma mater, along with a master's degree in the same field. She is active in her professional community and has served on the board of the directors for HR Tampa in college relations. And when she's not helping businesses optimize their operations, Michelle enjoys traveling and supporting various philanthropic causes, including High Hopes and High Heels and Shriners Hospital for Children. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Gosh, I am so impressed with everything that you have on your resume and that you've accomplished. And it is not fair to say that you are a serial entrepreneur because that would imply you launch one company at a time. You're more of a portfolio entrepreneur. You create and launch several companies simultaneously, like, oh my gosh. So that takes a lot of creativity. So can you tell us a little more about what you're up to these days and all of your different companies?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So a lot of it came out of, I would say, a financial need and some of it a creative need. And kind of one would drive the other. So initially, I started Griffin Resources on my own, and I wanted to be a consultant while I was getting my PhD. And that happened right at the very end of 2019. Once COVID hit in early 2020, obviously both my husband and I were affected. And so we worked to have his expertise under the Griffin Resources line of business. And his expertise is providing IT hardware to managed service providers. Mm-hmm. And we ran that side along with the HR, talent acquisition, and payroll support for businesses under Griffin Resources. In 2023, we separated those businesses and made them independent. So there's Griffin IT and Griffin Resources. We created a parent company, Griffin Capital Holdings, made ownership structure there, and that business owns the other businesses. We really found some limitation with technology, hiring our own managed service provider to give us our own IT support, and also some limitation with some software. So rather than try to pay a lot of money for, we were using Salesforce. That was really expensive. And, we had to pay a lot of money for an IT support company. We started using our own resources and built a managed service provider just for ourselves and put that under a company called Griffin Cloud. And so under Griffin Cloud, we started hiring developers, tech support, international staff that provides our own executive assistants, project managers, and that team gradually grew into all of our digital marketing, social media marketing. And so now we have about 20, I think, in the Philippines. We also have some developers in India and Pakistan. And so we started really kind of working with other companies and their team members and then kind of bringing them into our own infrastructure. So we had to really think outside the box to make solutions work for all of our companies that we didn't have to pay so much money for. That also gave us the ability to develop new technology that we wanted to use. So we bought our own CRM that we could develop and manipulate and control. And so now we're able to have a lot of our own sales funnels, manage our own sales leads and marketing. And we can do all that. I literally have even now daily meetings with our CRM developers, and it's, I don't have to pay a lot of money for all of that overhead or using an IT firm or something of that nature. So bringing all that in-house, we can control our costs, we can control our project development. We also created an HR audit through Smartsheets. And so we hired a Smartsheets developer specifically for that project. It took us about, I would say, 3 months to automate the tool, and then we've spent the last year really perfecting it. And so with that, it takes about 2 hours to do an audit intake and kind of fully go through the questionnaire. And then from that, we've really designed a compliance regulation output from that. And then from there, we have a process to review all these documents. And we also brought in SharePoint developers. And so we have an entire SharePoint site that we can control like security that way. So people can upload documents, but they can't be downloaded. We can securely share information. And so we really wanted an economical and easy way to document share with our clients. And so we control it that way with a lot of permissions and oversight and things for that use. Mm-hmm. And that process really made our audits faster, easier, and a little more economical for our clients too. So we've been able to try to use technology to our advantage, as well as, taking the time to build it all ourselves and customize it.
Wow. So all of that since 2019.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
So 5 years now.
5 years. And how many companies? I lost track.
So that was 4 that I described. The 5th one is a commercial charter plane. So that one I primarily own. We own the plane and we put it in a charter fleet. And so I primarily work with the charter company for obviously cash flow, the compliance regulations, insurance, and I'm still learning aviation. That's not an industry I know very well. Mm-hmm. That one was a hobby with a friend that turned into a company and turned into a profit center. So,
all right, everybody, watch out if you're a friend of Michelle's, because hobbies can turn into companies. So 5 years, 5 companies later, everything from charter airplanes to cloud, IT, developers in India and Pakistan, CRMs, audits, Smartsheets, security, HR. Wow, that's exceptional. There's so much there. And one of the phrases that you said that, of course, caught my attention is how you think outside the box. And when we think about creativity, so how does creativity fuel your ability to run all of those businesses at once?
I think it comes down to really hating the phrase of it's always been done that way. Mm-hmm. And so if you're kind of stuck in this mindset of I'm just going to do it because it's always been done that way, it's never going to progress. And it's more about how to make things faster, cheaper, easier, obviously, to take off some of that burden. But the other thing that is really important to all of our companies is doing more with the overhead and trying to get people out of the weeds of their own jobs and using technology to their advantage. So we're not trying to work people out of a job. We're trying to do the exact opposite. We're trying to empower them to do more with their time and not do things so manually. So for a direct example, in the CRM, rather than having our sales admin send out emails or keep track of, having a task in the CRM once a quarter or something to that effect of just kind of keeping up with our pipeline, we can have automated messaging go out, obviously using the CRM to its advantage. Most CRMs can do this. That's not a uncommon feat, but being able to make sure that is working correctly. We have, links for scheduling meetings, shared calendars. So we try to push it to everything it's capable of doing and making sure we're communicating with our team members to know what are they doing manually. We have what we call an automation team. So we have about 3 people on the team right now, and one of their biggest jobs is to find automation and build the tools for it. So right now I have them shadowing probably 3 different teams to understand what their job is and then see what we can do to automate some of the manual processes that they're doing, including everything from our invoicing process so that we can scale and grow faster, or at least to a bigger extent, because if something is very manual and it takes a day to do invoicing, once if you want to grow the company bigger, that's 2 days or 3 days just of invoicing. So we have to find a way to make things easier on the team members and more efficient. So things like that are happening now. So we've obviously done a lot with Power BI, Automate, Zapier. So we have an entire development team just focusing on that.
Wow. So, making sure that those automations are there so you can, sounds like you're wanting to maximize your human hours and take some of this automation off their plate so they can focus on the most important things.
Right, right. And making sure that they can collaborate together easier, and that their jobs as team members, because everyone is remote, and creating a collaborative environment online has been something we've, I don't want to say struggled with, but focused on since COVID, because this whole thing was built during COVID. Originally in 2019, the team was local, everyone was in person, all of our clients were in person. And then once we were all sent home, we grew the company through the rest of 2020 into 21. And I have team members I have had since that timeline that I've never met in person. And that I work with on a very regular basis. And so I've got literally a team, and some of it would be easy to travel to. I just, one of those things we just haven't ever done, but it's worked out really well to have an intentional culture of being mindful of their work-life balance, but also what their work tools are and the infrastructure that they use, and try to make sure that we're focusing on what makes their lives easier. And we keep trying to grow for that purpose too. And so we kind of have an internal culture and an external culture or value system that we try to keep really important for us and them.
But what a noble pursuit too, because you're right. So much of what we do is online. And when you're building collaborative environments, especially in your work where you are not just multi-state, you're multinational, like you're in multiple hemispheres, you've got to create these environments where people can do their best work.
Yeah, and we also service clients that are international too. So we do have some we don't do operational support for companies in other countries because we just don't have the regulations knowledge to do that. But what we do is help clients that our parent company is in another country and they make a subsidiary here in the States. And a lot of times they end up multi-state and don't know how to navigate that. And what we'll do is make sure that they have team members that are right for that parent company's culture and how they're going to work between their parent company and the U.S. And so making sure that we are very aware of the multinational culture that takes place, not only for ourselves, but for our clients. A lot of times there's language barriers. So for example, one of our parent company's clients is in Spain. They have a subsidiary here in the US, and we have a team member that is partnered with them specifically to speak in Spanish, and all their emails and correspondence, everything is done in Spanish. So that is something that we, worked hard to accommodate for them, made sure to hire specific talent just to make sure we could have multilingual team members for that, especially to know that it could be corporate language speakers, not just native language speakers, which can be a little different, especially in the HR and business world. But for our own sake, and also being, not just the language part, but for there's different religious accommodations that usually is made, or just recognition of that for different days off and coverage of that. So that's especially working in the countries that we're in, between the Philippines, Pakistan, and India. Those are just different cultures, different work expectations. So we ourselves are pretty conscious of, trying to make sure that we keep all of that in top of mind, even with the United States here with different religions, and same thing for our own team members here in the States too.
Definitely. Yeah, if you're working with somebody from the South versus the Northwest, it's completely different. Yeah. So needless to say, you have got to have a lot of energy and creative problem solving, in your work. And I'm curious, have you ever had a creative breakthrough in one business that kind of came from an unexpected insight from one of your other businesses, and how did you connect those across those two ventures?
The IT side often kind of influences the HR side, I would say more so than the other way around. It because of the way that the developers are always working on something, they're playing in AI, and I will want data, and I will want information, and I just don't know how to get what I want. And that's when, working with the IT team will do that. So there's oftentimes been situations where I wanted to, like Power BI, for example, I didn't know what it was capable of and wanted to have dashboards and things of that nature. So some of the dashboards that came out of the CRM and some of the analytics that were made available to the sales team in Griffin IT, and things like that kind of made me jealous and wanted to go build my own dashboard. So I hired a Power BI specialist specifically to do that. And then once I was finished with my dashboards, then my husband that runs Griffin IT got a little more jealous of that. So now he's going to steal him and have him make more dashboards for him. Wow. So we kind of we're always kind of trying to stay, I would say, kind of competing with each other on how we work with our team members to become more efficient. So I would say a lot of times what happens is our clients will have ideas that will also inspire ideas for us. And that's where the smart sheets came from. One of our clients had the idea of smart sheets and using it for more efficient workflows with themselves. And that's when I was like, I want to do that too. Worked with the smart sheets developer, told them where we had been doing Word documents, Excel documents, trying to make workflows happen from the compliant, it's basically an if-then. If you do this, then you're compliant. If you don't, you're not compliant. And, we just needed a tool that was going to take that guesswork out of it and human error out of some things and built it in Smartsheets. So there's been a lot of random resources or influence of things that have kind of end up, driving projects for years.
Yeah. No, but I always think that first of all, necessity is the mother of invention, and people who are closest to the work a lot of times have the most creative ideas. And it sounds like that's what happened with the smart sheets scenario. Like they had a need, and you both had a need, and they came up with an idea.
Yeah. So it's definitely been one of those things where I saw the team members struggling. They would take a lot of time to build the final report, and that's where we ended up coming up with the idea of smart sheets to make the final output of information once you get through the if-then questions. But to make it a really nice document at the end of that, that's when we had to bring in our developers to use a make connection between the output report and a Word document that the auditor, HR specialist could then go through and clean up and make it presentable to the client. So that's what we had to really kind of pull in a lot of different resources to make the final product usable from, the original smart sheets. So we started, we didn't want to just make a report and then still have manual processes. That was so I just basically, when I see team members struggling, and I was like, there's got to be a solution for this. I don't need you spending 15 hours just to make a pretty report out of, and our audit reports are pretty long. They're pretty lengthy. They can get to be 30 pages because we dig through the entire area of HR. And so trying to be more efficient with time, do more with their time and make them more efficient was where that idea came from. Mm-hmm. Took me a year to get it right, but eventually, but we were using it as we were building it. And then we all, because HR laws and employment laws are always changing. We're always updating it and keeping it relevant. Mm-hmm. So we spend a lot of time on it.
I mean, that brings up an important topic about when we're faced with failure or roadblocks. And, you've got a lot of projects in motion. So when you do face an obstacle, are there any specific habits or mindsets that help you in particular push through?
My motto during my dissertation was, "This too shall pass."
So, I totally understand that.
So even right now, I think I've got 4 or 5 reoccurring meetings almost daily. So I meet with different developers for different projects. Some of it's weekly, some of it's twice a week, depending on how fast I want to drive the projects. So the first 3 hours of my day is usually back-to-back meetings with developers for different projects or project managers and things of that nature, and internal check-ins with my team and things like that. And of course, we'll come up with ideas, and then I'll want to start that idea, and I have 4 other on my plate, and then I'm just wanting solutions so quickly. So now I have to tell my project manager to delay something. I was like, take note of this. I want to work on this next, but let's finish some of these other projects and get them working and make sure other people can just make usable tools for them. And then we're just kind of tweaking or updating or making things work as we go, and then kind of work on other projects. So I used to spend most of my day working on quite a bit of projects, hours on end. And now I'm trying to make it a little bit more feasible. So I personally have work-life balance, and I'm not working myself stressful to the point where my eye is constantly twitching. I can go months without my eye twitching now. So,
done.
But yeah, I try to kind of just keep the idea that I'm working towards a goal, and I always know what the end goal looks like, and I know the end goal is achievable. And I may not know what timeline it's going to take. I have the ability to kind of persevere through it. And as long as I'm spending time and attention on it and dragging the team members with me, it gets done.
So I'm just so curious. You and I are both type A. We have a lot on our plates. You have way more on your plate than I have on my plate. I'm only running one company at a time. I'm just, a single entrepreneur. But did you ever have anybody in your life speak up and say, Michelle, I think you've bitten off more than you can chew? Or did you just figure that out on your own? Where are your boundaries? Where are your limits?
No, I had everyone was telling me that all the time, and I just didn't care to listen, I guess. So when, especially because I built my company while I was getting my dissertation, and that was probably the hardest lifestyle to have while staying married. And I've been with my husband we've been together 19 years. I think we've been married for 16, something like that.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so we've been together a long time. He's put up with my higher education for a while. And so when I was doing my master's, that one, I was working full time and going to school full time. So I did do my master's in 2 years. And our rule at that point was I just didn't do schoolwork on the weekends. So I was staying up really late during the week. I had a lot of stress to get that done without doing homework on the weekends or writing papers or whatever. And it was a really hard cram session for literally 2 years without much of a break. And so this time with the PhD, I knew it was going to be more of a marathon. I knew it was going to take, at least 5 years was my goal. I did it in 5.5. And I started the company in my second year of school. So it was kind of by the time I had been in school, about 2.5 years is when the business kind of started as a contractor, independent contractor, and then moved it into a full-on business by the beginning of year 3. So about the time I was getting into dissertation-only mode was the same time I was launching the business, and really that taking off, kind of in the middle of COVID as well. So most people think if you're going to be an independent contractor, you can control your own schedule. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, it's easier than having a job. It is not. It is much more responsibility, especially once you decide to have employees. Their life and their income is your responsibility to maintain. And so I did take that that to heart, and that was always something that really impacted how hard I worked. So I would work long hours in addition to trying to work on my dissertation, which did delay if I would focus on one or the other or try to get both. And most people were like, you're burning a candle at both ends and you're going to burn yourself out. But again, I knew this too shall pass. So I was like, it's going to get done. This is not forever. And as long as I can, knock it out and get it done, the faster, the better. And then it'll be over. And so that's kind of one of the things where I would, pull all-nighters for a long time. And then eventually obviously had to start working on the weekends. And my husband would, kind of be there with me. He would, be sitting there doing whatever. We'd kind of just hang out together. And I felt like I wasn't alone and locked in an office somewhere working alone. At least we were together and he would be doing whatever he was doing, usually playing video games or something. But but it was definitely
analyzing data and writing on your dissertation. Yeah.
So that was kind of one of the things where that whole time people were like, you're taking on way too much. And even now we travel as like, that's our passion. And so we're gone about 50% of the time. And we work while we travel. So that's the other thing is we're not waiting to like take vacations or anything like that. We will continuously work regardless of the time zone that we're in. And I don't usually take time off. If I do, it might be like one day here or there. But for the most part, it's continuously working even while we're just in different places around the world. So that's also kind of a nice advantage that we have. But it's not one of those things where I get to, usually it's like, well, we'll still work and then get to try to explore whatever new location we're in. So that's been a really nice reprieve, I guess, from feeling like you're working so hard.
Yeah. I kind of take that approach as well. More of a work-life integration than a balance. I'm like, I'm not sure what that means, but I do know that my work and my life have, seamlessly interwoven now, and it's a good pace. Sounds like that's a similar approach. Yeah. Well, let's thinking back, moving us back into creativity and your work, and thinking about roadblocks and failures. I'm curious, have you ever had a failure that turned out to be a catalyst for creativity? Like, how do you reframe those setbacks to kind of fuel the innovation that you need for your companies?
Yeah, there was definitely some times when there were some work with clients that ended up being a really big financial burden on us and the client. And usually we took the financial hit for that, or we always took the financial hit for that. But then we would review what was the root cause of that and make sure that a lot of that came to where we were documenting processes. And so now we have a very strict structure on our SOPs, how our team members communicate, real documentation, and we have, really structured workflows for different areas of the business. So if it is recruiting, for example, and it's about managing the job posts for our clients, sometimes it can be on their credit card, sometimes it will be on our credit card, and we just do a pass-through charge for those for anything that's charged to our card on their behalf if we're doing the job search. And we did have some issues where if it was an HR person that was working with the client and may not have access to the portal where the client was job posting, and we were sort of included in their recruiting, but we didn't have maybe full visibility or responsibility. And there was we now basically have better structures and better communication access. So we now explain to clients what they need to know when they're posting jobs on their own. And Indeed and LinkedIn can get very expensive very quickly if you're not sure how to manage that. So before that, we would have certain responsibilities and, made sure that we were working with our clients and being transparent as possible. But now we, over the years, have made sure that we document all of our processes internally, but also with our clients. And so that's probably been the biggest change that we've had, is when obviously it was pretty expensive. There was one situation it was a $10,000 mistake or oversight just from double charging credit cards. And they were job posting, we were job posting, and it was different jobs. but some of it we can maintain and have visibility to, some of it we couldn't. And some of it was, just a lack of communication on their part, on our part. And so, we obviously covered the cost of that and learned a lot of valuable lessons when it came to, documenting and turning in reports and letting them know what's going on along the way. So those are some of the things that I would say, like now HR, payroll, we try to limit our liability when it comes to as much, insights that we have into those processes with our clients. It also helps us get removed from our clients faster and easier. We're not meant to be forever with our clients. Some of them we are. Some of them we've been with for 4 or 5 years this whole time. Or when we get them, they want us to stick around forever. But really, a lot of times we're interim. They're, may be hiring someone and we want to transition to, the next person, train the next payroll specialist or the next HR specialist and leave. And so being able to document those processes is valuable for the client because it's much easier to pass on the work and we can exit pretty quickly and they don't have to pay for double the overhead for us and the new person. Right. So that's been valuable too. And we've learned to exit clients pretty quickly.
Yeah. Gosh, that's an expensive lesson to learn, but it's sometimes that's the way it goes, isn't it? Yeah. So what's your husband's name?
James.
So you and James, y'all travel a lot, for personal and, integrate your business in that. So, when you think about traveling, there's research that shows that when you take a vacation, when you leave your home space and you go travel the world, or even if it's just kind of a staycation and you're exploring something in the next county, when you come back, your mind is opened, you're more creative. And so I'm curious, has any of your travels, has that influenced your creativity and problem solving?
I haven't thought of it as a direct correlation, but I'm sure it's there. I want to say I'm more tolerant and patient to other people's ideas and making sure that we stay diverse and we give everyone a voice. So people from different cultures and backgrounds and belief systems, and it doesn't matter if it's, an entry-level person all the way up to the leadership team. I try not to overtalk. I try not to, overstep. If I've already learned a lesson and they have an idea, I will let them know where the lesson learned came from or market research we've done. And things like that. So if they have an idea and I shoot it down, I usually try to explain where that thought process comes from. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, trying to make sure that we are very open and aware of each other and respectful of each other. That is something that I like when I travel. When I'm traveling, I try to be really respectful of other people's language and cultures, and I try to at least speak pleasantries in the language of where we go. James is already multilingual, so it's really easy for him to. He only speaks a couple languages, but he can read and understand several languages, and so for him, he's pretty easy. He gets along with a lot of people, so I try to at least kind of fit into the culture a little better. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I try to take back is, what I learn in other countries, but also, just to be open and transparent with people and tolerant of everybody.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But that in itself is almost the definition of creativity, where you're being open to different ideas and different ways of doing things. And like you said, you hate that phrase of, oh, this is the way we've always done it. So it sounds like a lot of times your travels have opened that up for you. Different ideas, different perspectives, different cultures that can speak into your work.
Right. And even when I was younger, I couldn't understand accents. Even if they were speaking English, it was really hard. And the more that I've traveled, the more that I hear other languages, it's become much easier for me to understand other accents. And so that's also been really nice to be able to work even with, people that have immigrated here or are, other generations or English is a second language. been able to work with different people like that that I could when I was younger. So the more I traveled, the more I have found that that's really also been in my favor personally, but also, helpful with the clients that we can support and the different types of people that we encounter. And, when I was, if we have time for a real fast story. So when I was the director of HR at a pretty large company, we had about 800 employees. Someone, could wander over and try to start talking to me, wanting to discuss an HR issue. And I often would have to pull in one of the other, HR generalists to sit in on the meeting because I'd be like, what did they just say? Take the phone. I have no idea what they're saying. It was bad enough that if it was, an Australian accent, British accent, it didn't matter. I could not understand it. And now I can understand Scottish accents, that one's even a harder one. And I can Irish accents, so just traveling through those kinds of regions. So if obviously Spanish is much easier. So people that are a little more Spanglish. And so those are much easier accents for me to understand with English as a second language than ever before. So I like being able to support companies from other countries that want to start business here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
And so that's really widened our expansion of types of companies that we can help out.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, where did you grow up? Where's home?
Alaska.
Wonderful. Where? What part of Alaska?
Anchorage.
Yeah.
So I grew up, in the dark, cold, snowy wilderness, and now I live in sunny Florida, and I do not intend to leave. I can visit other places, and I will visit the cold, but I'm not moving back.
Well, that's a natural reaction to me. If you grew up in the cold, dark of Alaska, why not move to sunny Florida? So fantastic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm curious, Michelle, you've got so many different things on your plate, and you are a woman of action. You finished a PhD while launching companies. Now you're running 5 companies simultaneously. You have teams around the world. It does not sound like initiative is hard for you. What advice would you give to someone who has a lot of ideas, but they struggle to take action on them?
I would say everything, even though it was done over the last 5 years, which sounds, I don't know if sometimes that sounds fast or slow. The business grew really fast. So I got it to 7 figures by year 3. And I was always taking advice from business owners. I did a lot of market research, interviewing other, business owners, other consultants, people in similar industries or just kind of adjacent. So if it was like leadership coaching, things like that. I took a lot of advice from people. I definitely wanted to talk to people that had obviously smarter than me, had been in business a lot longer, understand, some of the pitfalls they had. So I didn't always have to learn the lesson myself, which was really helpful. And a lot of business leaders, some of my first clients, really helped me out. And I didn't quite understand how helpful it was at the time. And so leaning on other people, asking for help is definitely something that is really important. I didn't even name my own company. I didn't name Griffin Resources. One of my, networking colleagues, when I didn't even understand, business finance, and he's a wealth management leader, and he was telling me to get an LLC, and I didn't. He's like, it's literally the purpose of it. It's a limited liability corporation. It separates you from your business. He's like, you have to go get it. And I had been at this point, maybe consulting for a couple months at this point. I started, like I said, October, I think. And then by December is when I established the LLC. But I didn't want to do a DBA. I didn't want to just start something and then rename it later. that was for some reason important to me. And he was like, start the business in starting in 2019 is going to be important because at least it's earlier than 2020. That was one of the things he wished he had done, was just start it right away and launch and figure out everything else later. And one day I was like, I don't know what to name it. And he finally he blurted out Griffin Resources. And I was like, that sounds great. I don't know why I didn't think of that. We looked it up. The LLC was available and kind of the rest is history from there. But it's really important to network. I never paid a business coach. I didn't pay for a board, for a board of directors or anything like that. I never took out a business loan. I didn't have to. The way that our service was set up, it's not a thing. It's not like I had to go to, a manufacturing and create a product and then go sell it. Quite the opposite. I just manipulated my abilities to whatever service the companies and business owners needed, and stayed very agile and customized. I stopped customizing the pricing. That eventually got pretty static. But with I don't say you have to start with these packages. You have to have a retainer, and we do all these things. We don't have minimums. We don't have retainers. That's something we've never put in place. So if we only work a little bit of time, I've literally sent out an invoice for $50. And so if they want to work a little bit with us or a lot, then it just depends on whatever they need. And so those are some of the things that I've just listened to the companies, listened to the business owners, and just kind of made something that they needed versus trying to build something and go sell it. So that was really important. So just, market research is really important, listening to people and just getting out there and doing it versus trying to, there's a lot of times where people would say, well, I need a website, I need marketing, I need this, I need that before I can, really take the plunge. I don't have a logo. To this day, I don't have a logo. And for that bothers some people, but my word, Griffin Resources, is, I think it's originally built on Word, and it's pretty much been the same ever since. We do have a really nice website now.
Yes, we do.
And so, but it's one of those things that it just kind of, our colors are pinks-ish, shades of pink. My favorite color is blue. And so it was just, the marketing kind of came out of that, and we went with it, and it's been the same ever since. I've never really rebranded much. So I would say don't get caught up in some of those little details. Don't go paying for things that don't make sense, and really take advantage of the help that's out there, and really listening to people, and just drive. There's a lot of grunt work that is put into it. It is long hours. The more grind you put into it in the first few years, the easier the rest of the years will follow. It takes a lot of grind, and there's no way around it. Especially the business owner, it's much easier if you do everything because you'll understand your business, and then as you delegate out, the people that you delegate to, when they need help, you'll understand because you've been in their shoes. Right. And so that's something that's really been helpful as we build different pieces of the company. I've always done what they've done. I no longer know how they do their jobs because I've never, I process payroll, I have, but I'm not necessarily a payroll specialist. And so they have, we have a lot of resources for them. We have a lot of legal resources for people that I can't help them with anymore. But I always make sure they have what they need to do their jobs and make sure that that's important to them. So when you don't know something, definitely make sure you don't know what you don't know. That's important. Right. And being able to admit that, and seek out people that are better and smarter than you. So leave your ego at the door.
Gosh,
a lot of lessons. There's probably a lot of like
there's a book in there.
A lot of lessons
Michelle.
learned.
When's your book coming out? I want to read it. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been such a fantastic conversation. And before I let you go, my research assistant, Percy the Penguin, has a few questions for you. Percy, are you there? Thank you, Percy. So Percy's first question for you comes from a previous guest, and the question is, what has a leader said or done that brought out the best in you and helped you believe in yourself in a way that you didn't before you encountered them? And then there's kind of a follow-up question to that. So how's a leader brought out the best in you? And then the follow-up is, how do you perpetuate that? How do you bring out the best in others and help them believe in themselves more than they do?
I had a mentor when I was starting in the HR industry. I was getting my master's degree when I switched into HR, and I was, literally, I think my title was HR coordinator. Mm-hmm. And I had the way that the cubicles were set up. My cubicle was directly in front of the COO's window of his office, and my mentor was the director of the essentially the one of the tech teams of customer service for the company. And I forget exactly what was going on in the company, but I wasn't asked to stay late, but it was something about a project that needed to get done and how much time it was going to take. And I was like, well, I need to get home so I can work on my schoolwork. And he said to me, no one cares. And he was a great mentor in a lot of ways. And eventually I would later get to, ask more questions and understand what he meant by that. And at first my feelings were really hurt.
Yeah.
But it really knocks you off your high horse of, I'm getting my degree, I'm, doing all these things for myself. And he's right. No one cares. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. And he's like, the way to do that is to be seen. He's like, don't leave until the COO leaves. And he's like, you want to climb to the head of HR? Stick around. And so there was one day I was there till, 6 o'clock on a Friday or something like that. COO hadn't left yet. I'm very visible to him. Yeah. And, he's like, what are you still doing here? And I was like, I'm working on all these things. And I was like, you're still here? So, and I did get ahead. I got promoted to the head of HR after only 2 years of experience and being at that company. I had finished my master's. I got my HR certification and was promoted to head of HR. I think I was 30.
Wow.
That was something that made me work harder to understand corporate politics, understand the value that you bring is more about obviously what you can produce, and how you show up, and what drives you, and obviously being able to show that I had a master's degree. Once I had it, it was definitely to my benefit. But the hard work that I was putting in behind that, no one wants to see the hard work behind it, and it's not in their interest to care. Mm-hmm. So that was something that I always thought was kind of something that I took with me on understanding the leadership teams and things like that. So how that helps other people, or other people around me, or how I've tried to encourage that. I try not to be too intimidating around my team. I mean, I think naturally people can be intimidated by leaders. I try to be a little more humanizing about that, and relatable. So it's one of those things I was when I was getting my PhD, I was always joking that I was like, I want to be called doctor. So everyone has to call me doctor. I've never actually made people say, I do like it. I do like being introduced as doctor. But in general, it's not like a normal title. I don't correct people to call me that. So I try not to be too much of an ego or in my own way. And so I kind of teach or help people to see leaders and other business owners as people, and try not to be, especially when it's our team members working with leadership teams and our clients, because that is a skill set that is learned, and we have to kind of help them navigate that, understand what leaders want to see. So emails need to be concise and precise. Mm-hmm. And so we've got some team members that like to be, they want to be understood. So they'll write a whole novel, and I'm like, no one's going to read that. So those are probably things I try to bring back some of those simple lessons along the way. That was a very abrupt way I was told, but it's nicer to be able to kind of coach people along the way.
Wow. No, that response of nobody cares, that's harsh. But in the long run, it sounds like, okay, that sunk in, and it's been so impactful for you through all these years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Percy's second question for you is, what is a question you would like to ask a future guest?
If they're an entrepreneur, I would like to know what their motivations are and how those motivations show up in their work. Because I often see companies that get started out of passion for a project or that something they were an expert in, but then really driving that into building a business is a much different skill set. So I would love to know a lot more about how they've turned their passion into a successful business.
Fantastic. That's a great question. Well, Dr. Michelle Griffin, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom with us today. Such great stories. How can our listeners find you and learn more about you and Griffin Resources?
The best way is probably our website, which is griffin-resources.com. From there, we have all of our profiles, my profile, links to LinkedIn, direct access to my email and my phone number. It's all there. So that's usually the easiest way.
Excellent. And we will link that in the show notes as well. So Michelle, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you to our listeners for joining us in this conversation. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who could use a dose of inspiration and creativity. And please leave us a review. I read every single one. So until next time, keep saying I'm in to creativity and bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. May you be wildly creative in your life and leadership. I'll see you soon.